Now that Helldivers 2 has finally given the Xbox a game worth playing, I've decided to jump back into my Super Destroyer and lend my expertise in spreading managed democracy to a new generation of soldiers. However, I wasn't prepared for just how much had changed in this world of perpetual wars spearheaded by the endless clones of my body since I was last launched into battle inside of that bullet-shaped hellpod. After originally overcoming some pretty devastating launch issues, Arrowhead Games eventually convinced me that it was time to buy a game that I would ultimately compare favorably to Deep Rock Galactic, which is an incredible company to be in. However, even with the hundreds of hours I enjoyed in those relatively early days, Helldivers 2 did eventually run low on compelling new content. Yet the enigmatic Joel never stopped engineering campaigns for hundreds of thousands of players to continue to engage with and roleplay through, and the past year and a half has apparently been quite the journey. The prospect of Terminids being annihilated by a glorified bug spray had everyone turning on poison towers all over planets, but that effort only led to more powerful bugs, including the ones that could fly and pluck your head right off your body. It got so bad that they decided to implode the entire planet, leaving a gigantic swirling void in its place. Then there was that time the automatons spearheaded a massive invasion and everyone had to choose between unlocking new weapons and saving hospitalized children, and we chose those orphans just like the true heroes that we were. And then, of course, the Illuminates show up out of nowhere to start some shit and eventually bring in a massive invasion fleet through that wormhole created by destroying Meridia, providing a clear path to directly assault Super-Earth. Also, somewhere in there, we apparently build a giant battle space station that you can donate your extra supplies to and vote into action around planets for surprisingly mediocre effects given its role as a gigantic orbiting war machine. But with these numerous story justifications for all-out war on nearly every planet in the general galactic vicinity came a greater expansion of gameplay. Instead of fighting exclusively on the open, rocky, and forested terrain that comprises every planet, there are now smaller walled-in cities you can dip in and out of, and entire city-based maps where you'll engage in street-to-street combat and/or running for your life while everything explodes. And with that, a combat buggy perfectly designed to fit your quartet of shooting boys and outfitted with a heavy machine gun on the back lets you find unique ways to navigate that terrain designed to ensure that your vehicle will never go faster than a light jog. And the most recent update brings a feature straight out of Starship Troopers Extermination with ridiculously dark cave systems taking up half the map. Here you lose the devastating firepower of your destroyer and have to fight blindly through hordes of bugs with only what's on your back and your magazines and strapped to your grenade belt until you can find the sweet respite of the open sky. But these caves do make those classic clunky mechs seem way better than they normally are by letting you mow down a tube full of enemies while only being in about 70% as much danger of being ripped apart and exploding. But these new environments also bring to the table new missions, like this one that has you rolling coal across the surface in a giant mobile mining platform to drill an even better proxy oil from Terminid worlds, at least until an absolutely fucking massive sandworm rips straight out of Dune and into your torso, launching you face first from low orbit into the ground. But when it's not vomiting horrific goop over everything in sight or slamming its massive body into the ground flattening everything in its path, it slips underground or rumble around to find the best opportunity to shoot up your ass. And it's joined by a whole host of new underground bugs that are equally opportunistic for malicious probing. But the biggest new threat is actually in the sky, and that's the Dragon Roach, which, as the name implies, is a flying bug that breathes the delightful combination of fire acid and is as tanky as the classic non-flying Bile Titan. But those aren't the only elevated enemies added to the game, because the automatons got some gunships that excel at floating around your cover to make sure you have no reprieve from having your limbs accelerated away from your torso. Those bots also developed a companion for the relentless Hulk Heavy with the War Strider that trades running at you with a flamethrower for laser blasts and laying down a fresh sprinkling of grenades to pinball your ragdoll around for an extra helpless feeling. And at some point they also added the Factory Strider, which is a gigantic AT-AT with even more guns and the power to birth a swarm of berserkers just to make sure you don't Luke Skywalker them from below. But the Illuminate brought a broad variety of oddities to the party, ready to find new and exciting ways to end one of your many lives. The most numerous are actually your former compatriots, the Voteless, which are basically just zombies designed to eat your bullets while the Overseers run up on you. These more alien-looking aliens have plasma guns, grenades, and sometimes even jetpacks to ruin your day without even touching the ground, and even enough armor to absorb a full magazine, assuming you can even hit them. But a full magazine is practically useless against the congealed amalgamation of Voteless affectionately called the Flesh Mob that will charge at you flailing every limb it's ever collected. And if that wasn't bad enough, these War of the World tripods stomp around behind the safety of their shields, ready to laser your legs off if you don't use them to skedaddle out of the way. And those squids even have annoying flying shit like the Stingray constantly strafing you with plasma and a giant gunship Leviathan. However, while all of these added enemies bring unique threats to the battlefield, Helldivers can now equip an arsenal of new weapons to meet them head-on with a fresh dose of freedom. Like this personal ICBM you can use to drop some heavy ordnance with laser precision into the faces or orifices of that alien scum. Or this expendable rocket launcher that packs the punch of the EAT-17 but with the smoky aftertaste of napalm all over your enemies and everyone in the general vicinity. Combined with all of the new ways to annihilate things with bombs, gas, fire, and electricity, as well as a customization path for every primary weapon, there's hardly a single loadout that won't result in rampant destruction so vast you'd almost believe it was coordinated. Helldivers 2 has had some noteworthy progress in the year and a half plus since its release. However, few if any of these changes have made it deviate from the core experience that ignited my initial love affair with the game. It's actually only become easier to get into exactly the type of mission you want to play against the faction you'd like to fight, and you can even stay there if you disconnect from the host. And the chaotic gameplay that blends the power fantasy of being a walking battleship with the desperation of moments where a waterfall of shit has hit an industrial-sized fan is just as prominent as it always was, though there are still familiar growing pains when it comes to the implementation of new enemies and missions that have to balance challenge with players' expectations and skill. Yet, the likelihood of any game maintaining a multiplayer population more than a year after its release is uncommon these days, and one still pulling in over 100,000 is rare to say the least. Helldivers 2 might soon or already be tipping into its decline of popularity, especially as more games attempt to usurp its throne atop the co-op PvE shooter genre. But with the addition of these fresh Xbox recruits and the ongoing effort to keep this never-ending war feeling like you're just one good battle from ending it, it's hard to imagine a time when it will ultimately fade away. But before that day ever comes, as long as there's democracy to be managed and aliens to be eradicated, I'll be there to defend Super Earth in my free time between playing other games. But if you'd like to see more hot takes, warm satire, and tepid commentary about these other games, like this video, reinforce Mega supporter Adam Lutke, and check out more Abbreviated Reviews.